Hi, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started as people trickle in. Thank you so much for coming today. We're excited to see you all. This is our very first LSA office hours hosted outside of kind of the HMIS admin meeting. For those of you that go to those monthly, there will be a lot of content today that is similar to the last HMIS admin call, but we will be able to dive deeper into some of the topics. We've got a couple additional topics, and hopefully we can get to all of your questions, all LSA things. I'm just going to quickly introduce, and they can kind of who you'll be seeing today. So if you were on the admin call, you met me, Kiera. I am in charge of kind of community outreach, organizing these kinds of events. And then we have Sean Morris on the call, who you also met at the admin call, and he'll be doing a lot of the HDX demos and talking about what's going on in the HDX world and the process for submitting. And then we also have Victoria Lopez on the phone, and she will be, or on the call, and she will be talking about the data standards manual and some other resources related to the LSA. We have a couple other people on our team, Juliana and Tanya, who will be helping answer questions in the chat. And yeah, so we, just to start off with, we are recording this already. Just like the HMIS admin calls, the recording and the PowerPoint slides will be posted to the HUD Exchange sometime next week, maybe, or the week of Thanksgiving. We'll see how quickly we get things turned around. And so you will have access to that, and a listserv will go out about that when it is posted. Okay, so next slide. So our agenda for today will be briefly going through the timeline, resources, and like kind of situating us where we're at now in the process. We'll be talking about what's new in HDX 2.0. We'll scroll through the LSA submission guide to make sure you all know what's in that. And then we'll be talking more about the submission process, the back and forth, and then showing you what that looks like in HDX 2.0. We will end with the scrolling through the data standards manual and talking a little bit about how you can utilize that in this process. Next slide. So just a reminder, this is the timeline. It is in the submission guide. We have shared it in all of our other meetings. Right now, we are on the 10th. We're at the end of the second week of the initial upload phase, and we have the 18th as the initial upload deadline phase. A reminder, this is not a hard deadline. It is a soft deadline to help you guys know where you should be in the process. So all that's really we want you to do during this orange phase is to get a successful upload. If you don't have, Sean will talk a little bit more about that. If you don't have a successful upload, work with your vendor. As long as you're making progress towards that, that is, you're doing what you should be doing right now. If you have had a successful upload or you get a successful upload before the 18th, you are welcome to start working on your flags, but you're not expected to, kind of the blue period is when we expect people to really dive in, but the earlier you start, hopefully the more time you have to work on things and get them all resolved. And then the gray periods, just as a reminder, you are able to still upload and work on your flags and write warning notes during the gray periods, which are the weeks of Thanksgiving and the week between Christmas and New Year's, but your regional inboxes will not be checked during that time. We will have people staffed on the AAQ desk on the non-holiday days, but those, if you have an emergency need or something that you'd really like someone to get back to during those periods, you can submit an AAQ ticket. But otherwise, liaisons will be replying to your emails through the regional inboxes during the whole orange and blue periods. Next slide. So I shared this on the HMIS lead meeting. This is, again, just all the list of places that you can find more information. We will not be really diving into what is the LSA or AHAR today or usability, but we will talk more about usability in a future office hour. And also some of the resources and stuff listed here we will be talking about in future office hours, but you can go to these places as well in the meantime to see what is going on. And those are all on that kind of HMIS lead webinars page. Next slide. I just wanted to provide an update. These are the main LSA specific, well, these documents are the LSA specific documents we've created to help you with this process. The data quality tool obviously is very helpful for the LSA, but can be used for broader things than just the LSA data cleaning period. All of these documents, I mentioned them on the HMIS lead webinar. They have all been updated and posted a week or two ago. So what's online is the most current document, and you can find those just by Googling HUD Exchange preparing for the LSA. It should come up really quickly, but once the resources should be linked in the last HMIS webinar, and they'll be in this one when we post it, but that'll just take a little bit of time. We will be talking about the data quality tool more in our next webinar or our next office hours. And the current Excel version is up and running and in use right now. And there will be an updated version that you'll hear more about at next week's HMIS call and at our next office hours. So, but for now, the CSV tool is the current version. Next slide. And then the last thing I'll share is just these resources. Obviously, we have added office hours. This is the first one. We will have 5 more. There are save the dates. All the rest of them will be on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. The save the dates went out in a lot of our previous communications. If you don't have the dates, email your regional inbox and we can get you those dates. Registration links, like the one for today, will come out closer to the date. Yeah, so the next one we won't have until after Thanksgiving, so that'll be a couple weeks off. And then the region-based introduction calls, all invitations have gone out for that. Every region has 3 calls, and so you should have gotten 3 invitations plus an email saying like, hey, we sent these out. All the calls will be the same, so you only have to go to one of them. You could go to all of them if you want, but that's not a thing where it's all the same information in all of them. People might ask different questions or whatnot, but at least the information we're presenting will be the same. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you didn't get an invitation or an email about this, please contact email your regional inbox and they'll be able to add you to the meetings. We had our first one yesterday. We have, they're all scheduled at different times based on the region and the team because they're being led by your own regional team. So they will happen the rest of this week and all throughout next week. And yeah, the reason we gave 3 times is just so people could hopefully, if you weren't available one time, you could go to a different time. We will not be recording those. But if you would like the PowerPoint slides from those, you can reach out to your regional inbox, whether you're able to attend or not. And that's all from me. Next slide.
All right. Howdy, everyone. So there are some exciting new things in HDX 2.0. First, there is no in-processing dataset status. So errors and warnings, they're going to be available pretty much immediately upon a successful upload. You might have to wait a few minutes for the flags to generate after uploading, but this is a much faster process than what we had going on last year. There is also an improved look to the summary data view tab and the data quality flag view tab in HDX 2.0. And then lastly, there are improved flag descriptions that provide more info to help COCs identify issues with their data. some classes of flags have been updated to include flag variables directly in the flag text or the description. And that just means that users are going to see things like the names of their projects or exact counts and percentages within the flag description itself, instead of having to rely on the flag variable table. Next slide. All right, so we're going to take a brief look at the submission guide. And the reason for this is because it is a document that is heavily cited and referenced by your liaisons and reviewers for all of your process questions. And it's also been updated for 2022. Let me go ahead and share my screen now. All right, so this is the submission guide. It's a long document. It's 37 pages, but I promise we're not going to go over every single section. A strategy that I like to use for these long HUD documents is just getting familiar with the table of contents, right? I don't have to know the exact answer, but I would like to know where I could find the answer. Specifically, we've been getting a lot of questions about how to change your COC primary contact in HDX 2.0. That is in section 2.2, managing users in HDX 2.0. Right now, at this moment in the webinar, we're kind of around here, section 3, an overview of the LSA submission cycle and process. And then later on in the webinar, we're going to cover navigating HDX 2.0 for your LSA data submission. So like I said, this guide has been updated for the 2022 cycle. So it does have new and relevant information that I think would be useful for y'all to review. But just be aware that when you ask process questions, your liaison is probably going to respond with sections that are taken directly from this guide. So it's useful to have this kind of in your back pocket. All right, let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. And our next slide is going to be the submission process. So let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts that go into the pre-submission process. And we're going to think of this a little bit as a two-game tennis analogy. So next slide, please. All right, you're going to hear the words uploads and submissions tossed around a lot, and it's important to recognize that these mean different things. So an upload refers to any data set uploaded to HDX 2.0. A submission refers to a data set in which an HMIS administrator has clicked that submit for review button to change the data set status from need COC review to submitted for review. And submitted data sets are the ones that liaisons and reviewers are going to be examining for COC notes. And only official HUD review files can be submitted. This is also a reminder that you are going to need an up-to-date submitter and primary for this, and that only the submitter can see the submit button. And there can only be one person for your COC with those submitting rights. So the submitter and primary, they can be the same person, they can be different people, but those roles do need to be filled in order to navigate through the LSA process effectively. All right, next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit about the structure of the data. So the LSA report is generated from a COC's HMIS, and it is a zip file that contains 10 CSV files with potentially thousands of rows of numerical output. Instead of reviewing those files directly, what you're going to need to do, right, is upload that file into HDX 2.0 and then review the results within HDX 2.0. And the results themselves are calculated by HDX 2.0, and they're displayed by reporting category and system use. One thing that I do want to note is that the LSA report file, the LSA calculated file, the LSA household file, and the LSA person file, they do not contain personally identifying information. So you are not going to find any person or household IDs in there. It may be tempting to look directly in those files if you're trying to track down issues with specific clients or households, but you're going to need to rely on other data quality reports and tools from your vendor. The LSA, unfortunately, is not really equipped to help you with that, and your liaison is not going to be able to tell you which client records are causing errors or warnings because of how that data is structured. Next slide. Okay, so there are some significant differences between local use files and official HUD review files. So first and foremost, you can't address warnings with notes in a local use file. You can use local use files to begin to review your data or to upload and store LSA files that are run on different time periods or maybe for smaller geographic regions. And that's especially useful if you utilize Stella P a lot, but none of the official review process happens with a local use file. Also, there is no longer an option to convert what was uploaded as a local use file to an official HUD review file. So if you uploaded a local use file and you've been using that to go through your flags, you're not going to have the option to transfer that to an official HUD review file. You're going to need to upload another data set, ensure that the upload type is official and not local use. That's when you can start entering notes for your warning flags. And when you feel that that is good and ready to go, that's when you're going to hit the submit button and it will be in your liaison's court. I'm going to hand it off to Sean now.
Okay, hi everybody. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual submission process and hopefully what happens after you get some information into HDX. So first, just to review some terminology, we want to talk about what different kinds of errors and warnings. First, there are upload errors and format errors. These are things that will actually prevent you from getting your upload successfully into HDX. And when you do that, as I'll show you in a moment in our demo, you'll get an error report. This is often something that you want to share with your vendor. That's probably the best way to start addressing some of those issues that would prevent you from uploading into HDX. And then once you do get data into HDX, your upload is successful, then you'll be dealing with data errors and warnings. So errors are things that we've identified that are impossibilities, and they're something that we expect you to address. In some rare instances, it makes sense for there to still be errors in the system, but otherwise, we expect you to address them in your HMIS and then hopefully resubmit. And then otherwise, probably what you'll spend a lot of your time addressing are warnings in the system. So these are things that are more unlikely or just oddities that we want to make sure that we followed up with you about. So I'll show you a little bit more about that in the demo in just a moment. So we can go to the next slide for now. So this is where if you were on the HMIS system admin call just a little while ago, you would have seen me talk about these analogies before. So I like to think of the submission process as two different sets of tennis games, basically, and the whole point is for you to win the game. So we're on your team, so to speak, so we want you to win. So the bigger game has to do with your data set status. So when you actually get an upload into the system and it's successful, then you have your data into HDX. Let's say it's an official HUD review file. Automatically the status goes to need COC review because that's when you are presented with your errors and warnings report. We expect you to address those errors and warnings, and then you can submit to us review. And if it's good, then you win the game. And otherwise, we'll move it back to needs COC review. So we kind of hit it back and forth. So this is for the whole data set status, and you will be done when the review is complete. So we can go to the next slide now. So this is just a visual overview. I find this to be a little bit useful. This is a more detailed version of the flowchart that was in the LSA submission guide. So basically, you see you'll be uploading in that upper left corner. You'll be uploading your data set. And if there's some issue with the data set, as I'll show you in a moment, then you'll immediately get some feedback that showed you what's wrong. And that's when the format check and upload error check is unsuccessful. When you do that, you'll probably want to talk with your vendor to see what's exactly going on. In some cases, it can make sense for you to talk to your liaison. But you'll get that feedback immediately, and then you can start addressing whatever is the issue. If your format check and upload error check is successful, then your data set automatically goes to need COC review. And at that point, you can probably, for most submitters, it's going to make the most sense for you to then immediately start re-uploading after you take a look at your errors and say, okay, these are different things that we can address. So you'll go back to the drawing board and then replace your upload and then start through that first kind of cycle again. So once you've addressed all your errors, at least that's the hope, you can get some feedback from Liaison after you've started uploading, then you can press the submit button, again, which I'll show you in a minute, and then you'll start sending a notification to your Liaison or reviewer team to actually have them take a look. So if that looks good, then again, they'll mark it as complete. And if it looks like we still need some more information or some more attention, then we'll mark it back to need COC review. So this is the status for the whole data set. That's kind of one tennis game that you play. And then there's this other tennis game that has to do with individual flags. So any one set of flags has its own flag status, which I'll show you in the next slide. Right, so by default, when any warning flag gets opened, or is presented to you, I should say first that errors don't have a warning flag status because errors are hopefully things that you'd be dealing with in your HMIS system and then re-uploading. But warnings are things that we are reviewing and want to get some feedback from you about. So by default, all warning flags get a status of note required. So this is our way of saying, hey, we want to hear something from you about this warning, some kind of explanation. And then as soon as you make any kind of note in that given warning, the flag status will automatically change to review required by Liaison. So we're automatically giving you credit for whatever you've written in your note. So we just ask, just to make it things easier on your Liaison and reviewer team, that you try to leave as comprehensive a note as possible, because that really helps folks kind of stay oriented as to what's going on. So if the note is sufficient, then again, you'll move to one of the green statuses. That light green status, the issue unaddressed, is something that we expect to use in a small minority of cases, but otherwise we expect to have most things be no sufficient data accurately reflects community. And if we still have some more questions, then we'll mark it back to the additional information requested from COC status. There is also this additional information requested from COC data have changed, and that will happen automatically if you re-upload an upload and the underlying data that has tripped that given warning has changed. So this is a useful thing for a lot of COCs, just so that you can know that whatever you've changed in your HMIS system has had some effect in your upload. So that will happen automatically. So we can just head to the next slide now. Great, so I'm going to share my screen now and we'll go through the demo. What I'm about to show you is what it's like to get an unsuccessful upload and then what it's like to get a successful upload. So here I am opening up, you should be able to see my screen now. This is a test instance of HDX, so this is not real data. And you can see my name is COC Primary Smith. That's one of the test accounts that we have. So one thing that I can point out here is the HDX issues page. So in the LSA, in the production site, that is the live site, there is a banner that you'll see that has a link to this HDX issues page. If there's any problems that you identify in your data set, then that HDX issues page is the best first place to start. I won't show that here, but if you click on this link down here, then you can see what that website is like and then take an inventory of whatever the issues that we've observed are, and then you can report that to your liaison. But otherwise, you'd be spending your time mostly in this LSA page. So by default, you get taken to the View Official Submission Status. And in this case, you can see that COC Primary Smith has a whole bunch of access to a bunch of different COCs. For today, we're going to upload an account for the XX500 COC. So now we'll go to Upload New. And again, this is going to be a bad data set, just so you can see what that's like. So we'll browse to find the file. Okay, and I'm not sure if that's coming up. I'm seeing a Windows File Explorer window that's prompting me for my upload. And I'm uploading my bad data set. I'll make it an official HUD review file. bad data set to 27 p.m. And then I'll select the COC that it's for, and I'll say bad data set to 27 p.m. This can be useful if you just want to add some additional information here that you want to have access to later. So now, in contrast to last year, if you were around last year, this process actually took 24 hours in most cases. We ran processing overnight, and then we let you know in the morning. Actually, sorry, that's not true. The upload error report was immediate. But once you got past the upload error and format check report, then that was something that took 24 hours. So in this case, this was that bad data set, so this is what we expected. So if you want to figure out what happened, you can click here on Print Error Report, and you'll get this handy report that's in a little bit of technicalese, but you can often make sense of it if you want to open up your zip file that you've just submitted. So this is the kind of thing that it makes the most sense to you to follow up with your vendor about. So in this case, I mocked up this data set knowing that it was going to be bad. So this is something that, again, you talked with your reviewer about. So, okay, so then if we wanted to actually go and have a successful upload, then we'll click on Upload New. Actually, just to clear the slate here, I'll come to View All Data Sets, and I just want to make sure I don't have anything else in here. And I'll just get rid of this one. You don't have to delete that data set. I just wanted to do that for good measure. So, okay, so then we click on Upload New, and we'll upload our successful data set now. Okay, so that's our one with some known warnings and errors. It's official HUD review file, test 2:29 p.m. Again, it's XX500, test 2:29 p.m. You don't need to have the upload name be the same thing as the file comments descriptions. You could put anything in this comments and descriptions page. So we click upload, and this is the thing that took 24 hours to do. Once this uploads, so this could take a couple of minutes. So be patient with the process. But this is running now. We've had programmers working really tirelessly to make sure that this process was as seamless as possible. So I'll just give this a minute. So I can just try to start anticipating this. Once this is successful, and you can see that it is, then you can click on the View and Dataset, this dataset and warnings page, and then you get taken right to the summary data view, which you can scroll through, and this has some useful information about kind of some summary statistics that you can peruse. That can help you kind of get an overall sense of things. But otherwise, where we're going to be spending most of our time as reviewers is in this data quality flags views. So this blue banner will go away in just a second, but otherwise you can see here's your data warning and errors report. So we've got a couple of errors up there. Those are things that we'd want to address, hopefully with another upload. And otherwise, we've got all these warnings that we can address. So let me show you now the process of just what it's like to actually make a note in a warning. So here we'll just start at the top, and you see there's this modular window that shows up, and you'd want to take a better look at this than I'm about to, but you'd want to leave a thoughtful note that really comprehensively addresses the issue, and I'll say this is my first note. So basically not like that. And then you hit save, excuse me. And just a note, once you see the flag status is still note required, but if you were to navigate away from this modular window, then you can see, just going to reload this page really quick. Let's see, something seems to have happened. First note. Okay, yeah, then you can see that the status has automatically changed. So that's not, to be honest, that's not a very good note. You're just seeing first note right there. But again, this is just a way that we basically give you credit for your submission. So another way to leave notes, particularly with things that are issues on lots of flags, is to use this bulk update feature. So I'm about to show you that right now. So if you just click on all the flags that you're interested in leaving a note for. You can leave notes in mass. So you just have to click on every one of the flags there and then click on this leave note on multiple records. And we'll say bulk update feature is great. And then you hit update. And then you see automatically all of those statuses have also changed. And you see a little box here that gives a just a little snippet about what you've written. When your COC leaves you notes back, then you'll see also that this modal window will actually change with a note history with a blue note that comes from them. So the next thing that you'd want to do, hopefully the rule of or the guideline that I like to use is basically to get your whole submission together and try to make it such that all of your warnings have this yellow review required by liaison status before you come up here and you click this submit for review button. So that's just a useful kind of rule of thumb. When you click this submit for review button, I'll just give you a sense of what that's like. You get this error, this pop-up window that says, are you sure you'd like to do this? This basically is the big tennis game, basically. This is you kitting it into our court and saying, hey, I'm ready for you to take a look. I want you to go through each one of my warning flags and tell me what you think. So we click OK. And once that's submitted, you'll get an email confirmation that that's the case. And then you will no longer be able to edit any of the warning flags there. So the ball is kind of officially in our court, and we'll try to get some kind of review back to you within 48 hours or so. So that's not to say that you can't replace an upload. Suppose you have some correction that you know that you want to make. You can still click on this replace upload button, and then then you can kind of start the process over. So those are the two kind of tennis games. The one that has to do with the submission status up here is the big one, and the real your whole job on the LSA is done when this area right here is complete. And again, you'll need to receive a notification about that. And otherwise, that will happen when all of these individual warning flags are hopefully some shade of green. So we just would aim for you guys to have completed that with us before the end of the final deadline on January 11th. So. Okay, that's the end of my demo. I'm sure that there are some questions. Hopefully, we've been busy taking a look at that.
So I do want to jump in and respond verbally to one of the questions about LSA data quality counts or DQ counts not populating as flags. So a majority of those DQ count flags are not going to populate this year. They have been turned off. So you're likely not going to see them. And the reason why they were turned off, we got some feedback that a good chunk of those data quality flags did not make sense. And we also felt that with the new CSV HMIS data quality tool that is available, users could rely on that to find data quality issues kind of on the fly instead of trying to muddle through all the other LSA flags to try and pinpoint where those errors and issues might be. So there are still some DQ counts, some data quality count flags still kind of floating out there, but a majority of them have been turned off. So that is probably related to Christina's question of not being able to or not seeing them, even where there's data that might even trigger them. Okay, so one of the last pieces that I want to tackle with y'all is the HMIS Data Standards Manual. Before we jump into the manual itself, I want to talk a bit about what it is and why we are touching on it right now. The HMIS data standards were first published by HUD in 2004 as the HMIS data and technical standards. HUD, with all of its federal partners, has updated the HMIS data standards regularly. I think we are all very familiar with that. But in HMIS software must be able to collect all of the data elements that are defined within these data standards. The HMIS needs to support the system logic that is identified, and the HMIS needs to ensure that the visibility of data elements is appropriate for the project type and the funding source for any given project. And I feel like this is important for us to talk about on this call, because this is another document that liaisons and reviewers are going to be heavily referencing and citing and guiding you to when you have data questions about your flags. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. Okay, so if you thought the submission guide was long, this is much longer. And again, don't worry, we are definitely not going through this whole thing. But it is something that I want everyone to be familiar with, especially since I know we've got a lot of new people on the call and we've got other folks who are interested in a refresher. So there are quite a few sections, quite a bit of information in this document, but there are two areas specifically that I want to talk about in regards to the LSA, because we get lots of questions about HMIS participation status and bed inventory. So I'm just going to cover those sections really briefly and kind of give you a sense of like what you should be on the lookout for if you have questions specifically about those areas, or anything else of HMIS related for that matter. So let's go to, oops, come on, mouse. Wrong page. Okay, one big question that we get a lot about HMIS participation status is in regards to what happens when a project stops participating in HMIS. Either they used up all their funding or they expressed, displeasure with using HMIS and they no longer want to enter that in. They no longer have the capacity. There's a variety of reasons, right, why a project can no longer participate in HMIS. And so questions and issues kind of arise about what do you do with that project? What do you do with that data? The guidance around this you can find, and the manual itself is set up pretty consistently in each section. So you'll have your data element fields and responses in a table. And then above that, you'll have some more contextual information about the data element. So element 2.02 is in regards to project level information. And the HMIS participation status can be found kind of buried a little bit, if I'm being honest, in this operating start date and operating end date section. So just to kind of go back to the original question, what do I do with this project that stopped participating in HMIS? So the guidance here is if a project's HMIS participating project status changes, the operating start date should indicate the start date of the changed HMIS participating project status. If it is a new iteration of the project in HMIS, due to the HMIS participating project status changes only. What a mouthful. Essentially, what that is saying is you're going to have to make a new project. You'll have to close out your project that stopped participating, use the end date, the operating end date of the kind of like the final day of that project, and then you'll create a new project and make sure that the participating status of that project is set to no, because data is not being entered. HMIS data is not being entered in there. And you may ask, well, what do you mean by HMIS participating project? What does that mean exactly? That is when you will actually want to go and read some of that larger contextual information above any of the data elements, right? So in this section is where it lists out what HMIS participating project means. So it is that a project collects all required data elements according to funder requirements and local C policies and procedures within the COC's designated HMIS implementation, or maybe that data is being submitted to the COC at least once a year to cover the whole year of required data collection, required by the project. I feel like a lot of VASH projects might meet that criteria. But this is just kind of one example of, if you were to ask a question about HMIS participation status, right? You're coming to us, you're asking your liaison, what do I do about this project that's no longer participating? They've got this client data in, and now it's throwing up an error, even though they're closed. What happens? The liaison will probably refer you to this section and highlight areas that are probably going to be most useful to you. So it's beneficial to be, what's the word I'm looking for? To just get familiar with how the HMIS Data Standards Manual is structured. Another area that is very useful that we get lots of questions on is bed and inventory or bed and unit inventory information. So lots of flags come in about bed inventory, bed counts, and lots of questions around how should those counts be calculated. Again, we've got that table and response categories or field names, excuse me, for that data element. For this particular question, like how do we count bed numbers? You'll look at, total bed inventory, where it will give information about how you should count beds based on what project type you have. And this is important because in the housing, in the HIC, the guidance that is given for how you should report your bed inventory for rapid rehousing, for example, that is different from what the guidance is for rapid rehousing in the HMIS data standards. So this is a very good section for you to become familiar with, to understand how beds need to be reported in HMIS, as well as what are some of the definitions regarding types of bed types, or really for emergency shelter, like seasonal versus overflow, or what does dedicated bed inventory mean. So these are very useful definitions to be familiar with as we are going into the LSA review process. So that is the Data Standards Manual in a nutshell. You can find the data standards here on this page, and it is also included as a resource in a variety of tools that we've got, and I believe it's also on the final slide, the final resource slide that we've got here for this webinar. But when you get here, I do want to make a distinction that we were in the HMIS Data Standards Manual. You'll notice when you come to this page that there are two other sort of similar tools, right? You've got the HMIS Data Dictionary and you've got the HMIS Data Standards tool. Now, it's a safe space. So I'm going to say the data dictionary is not like a very well-named document, right? Because when you hear dictionary, you think you're going to get some definitions about what these things mean. But the data dictionary is actually a vendor document, right? This is something that your vendor should be familiar with to understand how these data elements are going to be represented in your HMIS. So you're not going to find that sort of contextual level information that we saw in the HMIS data manual. If you are unsure of which version you need, whether that is the manual or the dictionary, you can use this interactive HMIS data standards tool. And what I like about this is not only does it break it down in an easier to read format, right? Because you're not looking at that ginormo PDF, but it also breaks it down by your role, right? So maybe you're doing HMIS data entry. It's going to give you information about data collection guidance for project type. That's super useful. If you're an HMIS lead, it's going to give you links about the specific project descriptor data elements, universal data elements. It'll even take you to, I guess that's not here, COC lead. There we go. If you're a COC lead, It basically just has an overview. And there's also the Federal Partner Program Manual. So if you are really interested in how your ESG program needs to be set up, you'll want to go directly to the ESG Program Manual. So this is kind of like a one-stop shop for your data standards questions. And it's also maybe a bit more approachable than the manual that we were just looking at. It is set up in a similar way. We were just in the project descriptor data element. So you're still going to see the tables for the data elements. And then above that, you're going to get all of that nice, juicy contextual information and guidance. And that is likely what the liaisons and reviewers are going to refer to or do their best to refer to whenever you have data specific questions. All right, so back to the presentation. We've got a list, I think a fairly comprehensive list of resources here. They are not clickable, so you can't click on your screen right now and you won't be taken to them. But like I said, the webinar slides will be sent out. And these resource links, I would say, are especially useful for the LSA process in general. And again, they are resources that are heavily referenced and cited by your liaisons and reviewers to make sure that you are getting basically the most up-to-date guidance that HUD has provided for your specific needs. And that is all I've got.
Hey, sorry, I had to find my unmute button. Okay, so I just wanted to say that this is our last slide. As I mentioned before, these are the dates of all of our upcoming ones. They will all be on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. So you can mark those off in your calendar until we send the registration invites. I think someone asked in the chat how you get on those. Email whatever regional inbox, whatever region you're connected with, email that regional inbox. If you don't know what it is, ask someone that you work with or someone, you know, on the LSA, and they should know, and you'll just have to email that, and anyone working on the LSA is invited to those. So we'll just make sure that you are on the contact list or the invite list. And then right now, if anyone has any other questions, if we wanted to kind of go over any of the questions we got verbally, I think we've responded to most of them except for the ones that just came in. I think just want to say about the notes. We've got a lot of questions about how notes are saved currently. It is our understanding, or at least how it should be working, is that if you upload a new file, your very first file will be a new file, official upload file. When you want to replace that file because you've made changes in your HMIS, you should use the replace button instead of deleting and uploading a new file. If we are under the assumption that whatever notes you put in, if you replace that file, they will be retained, and we know that has been working in some cases. But if that is not your case, and I guess I would say anyone experiencing any problem that doesn't seem right to you, email your regional inbox, and either they will be able to kind of give you an answer of like, oh no, this is how it should work, or if it isn't working how it should be, then we have an internal system of escalating flags and looking into issues. And so the people that have raised concerns here today, we will look into that. A couple of things. For the issues that are brought up today, we will look into it. If it is identified as an issue, we will put it on the webpage. If you go into HDX 2.0 and you click on the LSA tab, that banner at the top with that, sorry, Sean might have already said this, but I was busy in the chat. So that link at the top goes to a page where we have listed all the issues. And then once they're resolved, we have the resolution and listed on that page. So you can check that at the top. It says when it was last updated, so you can see, you know, if anything has been updated since you were last there. That's going to be the best way to get in real time information about what identified issues as well as their resolutions. However, if you are always still welcome to reach out to your liaison, it does still help us to know how many people are experiencing a problem, and or like when we're going to figure out kind of maybe if there's a problem or what the root of it is, that helps. And if you reach out to your regional inbox, they will reach back out to you when the resolution has been solved or there's an answer. Sean, do you have something else? I'm noticing your face, maybe.
Oh, yeah, sorry, just reading the Q&As and trying to do some troubleshooting here. Yeah, the Weebly is something that we try to keep as updated as possible. It's the best first stop for you before you talk to your liaison. Of course, as you all know, it's possible for us to be making mistakes and for things to fall through the cracks. So whatever you can do to help us document the issue, particularly with something like lost notes. We don't have any, again, we don't have any confirmed reports of that yet, but if you can prove to us that it's a problem, then we absolutely want to help. So please let your liaison know, and then they will kick it up the old food chain, and we'll deal with it as soon as we can.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, so I think anyone else that's in the chat, we can also just respond verbally to anything else you're seeing. I guess someone else mentioned the AAQ. The AAQ is still running, as I mentioned, you know, on those holiday times, you can email it. I would say for most things, going first to your regional inbox, we are really, as I said in the HMIS admin call, we are really working to hit those 24, 48 hours of responding to emails, reviewing notes, even if it's to say, hey, we don't know how to answer, but we're working on this. The same thing will happen. I mentioned this in an intro call yesterday. For the reviewing of notes, our goal is 48 hours, but obviously there is a difference. Some things that impact our response time to reviewing your notes are how many notes you've submitted. So it takes more time to review 100 notes versus 11, but also how many other people are submitting notes at that time, and how difficult maybe or how specific your notes are might mean that we have to ask some other people and confirm things and see if we need more information, and that might take some time. You should be able to see our responses in real time when we add a note. So if we've responded to like 10 out of 11, you should be able to see those even though you can't go in and like edit things if it's in our court. So hopefully you can at least see what we've said to the other ones, even if we're waiting on, we won't send it back to you until we have answers and like a decision on all of your notes. Again, if anything we said today is not how you're experiencing the problem or you think something is going wrong, please, please, please do reach out to your regional inbox. And we do have an internal system for kind of working through all of, you know, actual bugs or issues or whatnot. There is, Victoria, Sean, anyone, Tanya, feel free to jump in. I'm just pulling things out and responding to them. There's not the option to change files from local use to official status. Yes, it was in prior years. We turned that off last year, and it's also turned off this year. So you can still upload local use files if you want to use Stella or other purposes for your own COC during this time. But for the purposes of LSA data cleaning, we recommend that you upload a file as an official file and just go forward on that. I think it might have been mentioned, not all the local use doesn't have as many critical upload errors that might affect your official file. And it also doesn't have all of the errors and warnings. It's only a subset. So you won't get all of your flags if you are just working in the local use file.
I want to verbally respond to one of Caitlin's questions because I feel like it would just be easier to talk it out. I was typing and then it got kind of wieldy. So the question is 1% threshold for overlaps related to overlaps that are not possible, such as overlaps between two entry-exit emergency shelters, as well as those overlaps that are deemed minimally possible, such as those between ES and rapid rehousing? It's going to be the first, right? So we're looking at overlaps between emergency shelter, two enrollments right on top of each other, or emergency shelter and transitional housing, or even safe haven. We're not looking at overlaps between ES and rapid rehousing, especially if like the rapid rehousing enrollment, doesn't have a move-in date. So that's something to consider. But yeah, I would say to be focused more on those sort of impossible overlaps.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's expressing their gratitude. Our development team has been working so hard on making the system work better. It's a lot of plumbing stuff to make your lives easier, and I think a lot of the time it goes unappreciated, so we really appreciate that. And we're happy to be making this process easier for everybody, and want you to have fun along the way. So. Okay, so we'll, I guess we have about another minute, but thank you all so much for joining. Otherwise, we'll stay on and answer any more questions. Otherwise, your liaison is your best first point of contact. We've trained them as thoroughly as we can, and they'll be happy to hear from you. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you all coming and being here and asking these questions and helping us figure out where there might be points of improvement.